Want us to get underway in a moment. We're going to be looking at a video, but I have a few words getting ready for that. First, to tell a couple of stories. Recently, a wife who is a therapist who works with grieving patients became exasperated with her husband, who was moaning nonstop about the current state of affairs in the world. You know what? You have gotten despiralized. Despiralized. You've gotten despiralized. Don't try to look it up in the dictionary. It's not there. It's a made-up word, but we know what she means. Becoming despiralized. Reverend Munther Isaac is the pastor of the Christmas Lutheran Church in Bethlehem. And Nina and I worshiped there one Christmas Eve a few years ago on a very snowy night. He tells the story in a sermon there of a child being pulled from bombed out rubble in Gaza. Are you hearing it? Gray with dust from a building that collapsed on her, a little girl was being carried on a makeshift litter by men who were racing as fast as they could go to get her to the hospital or to some kind of care. Gray with dust from a building that collapsed on her. She's on this litter, and as she's being carried along, she looks up at the men carrying her and says, "Am I being taken to the cemetery?" That was a gut punch, according to the pastor, to the men carrying a little girl, not sure she's alive. One of them assured her fiercely, loudly, "No, love, here you are. You're alive and beautiful as the moon. You're alive and it's beautiful as the moon." Before reflecting about Abraham Lincoln on our better angels, we'll take a few minutes to view a short clip shot here in Santa Fe in the previous election year of 2016. And Joyce, Joyce D. Donato sings Lascia io pianga, let me weep. We will weep with her, and she is playing all Marina in this piece from Handel's Rinaldo. And we are trying to get out from under our own sense of despair. Let's go with her as she sings her way into hope. Let's join Lincoln in Washington on Monday, March 4, 1861, on a covered platform on the east front of the Capitol, where the inauguration is to take place. Can you hear? For this setting, other background, and what I had to say, I'm drawing primarily on John Meacham's Pulitzer Prize-winning book, And There Was Light, Abraham Lincoln and the American Struggle. According to the 1860 census, there were 27 million citizens of the United States, with an additional population of 4 million slaves. 27 million and then 4 million slaves added to that, mostly in the South for the slaves. Lincoln, at the time of his inauguration, was on edge, because he longed to be the president of a united nation. Union was at the center of his prayer life and his hopes. He'd been elected by 40% of voters, and he was struggling to think through how he might become president for all the people in a very divided nation. At that time, one Southern leader called the anti-slavery movement a religion of hate. This is the anti-slavery movement, a religion of hate, denying to us equality of rights and implying a pretension of moral superiority. This is a note that was sounded often in the South during the war years. And it's a rough point we'll come back to in a minute. Lincoln's first inaugural address was marked by hoping against hope that the Union would survive while slaves began to receive the justice due them. That was his vision. He, at the beginning, was not clear about total abolition. He just wanted to make sure that the government didn't allow the extension of slavery beyond the slave states at that point. And he said, why should there not be a patient confidence? And think about our setting today in the world. Why should there not be a patient confidence in the ultimate justice of the people of the United States? And then there's a haunting line. I'll read it very slowly. While the people retain their virtue and vigilance, no administration by any wickedness or folly can very seriously injure the government in the very short space of 4 years. Again, I can hear it.
Yes, please. That's great.
While the people retain their virtue and vigilance, no administration by any wickedness or folly can very seriously injure the government in the very short space of 4 years. May this be so.
It's lips to God's ears.
It's the conclusion that will serve as the framework for a few reflections. He concludes his first inaugural by saying, I'm loath to close. He didn't want to have to stop talking. In a certain sense, that somehow we could all talk our way into hope. We're not enemies, but friends. We must not be enemies. Though passion may have strained, it must not break our bonds of affection. The mystic cords of memory stretching from every battlefield and patriot grave to every living heart and hearthstone, all over this broad land, will yet swell the chorus of the Union, when again touched as surely they will be by the better angels of our nature. Let's explore these better angels. We're going to look at several qualities that became central in the faith journey of Abraham Lincoln himself. He was coming of age spiritually every step of the way during his adult life. It's really fun to read the story of someone who was open. He would hear a sermon and then he would make a date with the preacher on Wednesday. He said, I want to talk to you about that. He did that with his preacher in Washington. He just stayed at it. He also tried to stay out of the way in the Washington church. He would sit in a little anteroom, not in the congregation, because he did not want the attention to be on him. He wanted it to be on the preacher and what the preacher had to say. We're going to talk about conscience, providence, and the golden rule. These three factors in the emergence of a man of faith as the president of this country. Lincoln read everything he could get his hands on. Everything he could get his hands on. He went to every play he could attend. He was growing and being nurtured and finding his way forward all the time. He read the King James Bible. He read newspapers and books covering a wide array of topics. He never did actually join the church. He was never on the roll, but he was in the mix, gleaning whatever he could glean to build his own understanding. One author he seriously took was New England preacher Theodore Parker. And Parker thought that we should quote from Theodore Parker. We should look at the facts of the world. You see a continual and progressive triumph of the right. I do not pretend to understand the moral universe, said Parker. The arc is a long one. You recognize this quote. The arc is a long one. My eye reaches but a little ways. I cannot calculate the curve and complete the figure by the experience of sight. I can divine it by conscience. And what I see bends toward justice. Martin Luther King used these words in a later generation to great effect. With Parker, Lincoln became convinced that we hear whispers, that word got used, whispers that shape us through our consciences, that we are receptors of whispers of what is good and right. His friend William Herndon related an experience that Lincoln had as a young man while in New Orleans that shaped his conscience irrevocably. This is a story that Lincoln told to Herndon. One morning, Lincoln passed a slave auction. A vigorous and comely mulatto girl was being sold. She underwent a thorough examination at the hands of the bidders. They pinched her flesh, made her trot up and down the room like a horse to show how she moved. And in order, as the auctioneer said, that bidders might satisfy themselves whether the article they were offering to buy was sound or not. The experience was so revolting for Lincoln that he hurried away from the scene with, as he told Herndon, a deep feeling of unconquerable hate for what he had just experienced. we would say he was conscience stricken, what he had seen. Lincoln labored, as we all do, to discern the ethical and moral roots of such an experience in our own lives. Where does that come from? Why Lincoln? Why at that particular setting? He was in his 20s at that point, in New Orleans, seeing what he saw. Well, let's follow him as he grows in his understanding of the Christian faith. Certain biblical passages resonated with him. One was central to his burgeoning understanding of divine providence. He thought about that a lot. Where is God in all of this? We're not alone. This is God's creation. He discovered more and more, within which we find the bearings for our faith. And one of his important, significant passages in his life was Psalm 19. And I'll read just a few words, and you can see what he was looking for and what he found. The heavens are telling the glory of God, and the firmament proclaims God's handiwork. Day to day pours forth speech, and night to night declares knowledge. There's no speech, nor are there words. Their voice is not heard, yet their voice goes out through all the earth, and their words to the end of the world. The law of the Lord is perfect, reviving the soul. The decrees of the Lord are sure, making wise the simple. The precepts of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Lord is clear, enlightening the eyes. The fear of the Lord is pure, enduring forever. The ordinances of the Lord are right and true, altogether. More to be desired are they than gold, even much fine gold. Sweeter also than honey in the drippings of the honeycomb. We're not alone. We are not alone in the world, and this is God's world. God is at work in nature, in the lives of human beings, and all that is taking place. John Meacham sheds light on Lincoln's understanding of God's providential care for creation. He writes, "The God who is revealed in the unfolding drama of history gives commandments, makes promises, and chastises and encourages humans through the prophets." Lincoln concluded at one point that all men are created equal. There can be no moral right with making slave of another. As I would not be a slave, so I would not be a master. Loving God and loving neighbor as self were at the very heart of this faith. That particular line from Matthew in the Sermon on the Mount. We're to make clear in our lives that our neighbors are a part of us. And finally, with this brief background on his journey and what he finally seemed to be coming to in great completion, what about this great divide in our history? This great divide between North and South. By the time of his second inaugural in March of 1865, 620,000 soldiers, North and South, had been killed. 620,000. Lincoln, so wanting union, was the president at a time of massive mayhem. I was doing some research on this, came across a series of photographs taken during the Civil War, just a stream of them, blur as they went by. There at Gettysburg, Nina and I lived close to Gettysburg, so we're familiar with it. But there at Gettysburg were bodies strewn across that open path and pathway into that arena where the fighting took place. 50,000 people, men mostly, died at Gettysburg. 50,000. The better angels have been sorely tested, North and South. That charge I cited earlier about the anti-slavery movement being a religion of hate was coming from a Southerner. It's a religion of hate that you're trying to promulgate. And you're showing that you think you're morally superior to those of us in the South. When Lincoln expressed his hope for better angels to prevail on both sides, he was making a tall order. In his second inaugural, a short time before his assassination, Lincoln lamented that both read the same Bible, pray to the same God, and each invokes his aid against the other. It may seem strange that any men should dare to ask the just God's assistance in wringing their bread from the sweat of other men's faces. But let us judge not that we be not judged. But we think about that from our own perspective, judge not that we be not judged. With this upsurge in Christian nationalism and racism all around us, we do well to remember how ideology trumped faith at the time of the Civil War. Ideology, the ideology of chivalry and the Southern plantation owners and the worlds that they were putting in place. Some plantations had as many as 250 slaves on that one plantation alone. How can we judge? How can we do no judgment? Listen to Alexander Stephens, the vice president of the Confederacy, and don't let anyone call you woke for not being willing to forget this dark side of American life. Some of us know that we're being called woke because we will turn to these passages, and there's an effort underway with taking books out of libraries and all the rest to try to shut down our consciousness about some of this. And that should not be allowed to happen. We need to know where we've been and who we are and what we want to become. Alexander Stephens, the vice president of the Confederacy, said, "Our new government is founded on the exact opposite idea of all men being created equal. Instead, the Confederacy's foundations are laid upon the great truth that the Negro is not equal to the white man, that slavery, subordination to the superior race, is his natural and normal condition. This," he said, "our new government is based on the great physical, philosophical, and moral truth." This great philosophical, physical, and moral truth. An editorial in the Georgia newspaper shares Stephen's fervor. "As a people, we are fighting to maintain the heaven-ordained supremacy of the white man over the inferior colored race." This is part of who we've been, who we are. One just quick example of the malignancy of this ideology following the Civil War will suffice. Isabel Wilkerson, in her book Caste, The Origins of Our Discontents. Have any of you read the book? Well, a very powerful book. She gives an account of the hiring of Black teachers for segregated schools during Jim Crow. A leading Southern official, Hope Smith, made a deliberate decision. When 2 Negro teachers applied to a school, take the less competent. Take the less competent. Isabel Wilkerson cites this as a nakedly creative way to cripple Black prospects for achievement. Her book cites, I would say, thousands of illustrations of what it was like in the South during Jim Crow and the movement toward Chicago and the movement toward LA and so forth. As we work to overcome our parallelization, we must call out the Hope Smiths in our own setting. We must stop and talk to them, hopefully in some sort of dialogue, but they must not be able to just roam freely in silence as if they're telling the truth. You need to pay attention to angels. And I'll close with a great line from the book that I've been citing all along. Hannah Johnston, the mother of a Black Union soldier, wrote President Abraham Lincoln in a time when he was under great pressure to rescind the Emancipation Proclamation. People were pounding him, pull back, and to rescind it. And she wrote the president and said, "Don't do it. When you are dead and in heaven, in 1,000 years, that action of yours will make the angels sing your praise." And that is our hope, that in our own struggles, we might have that sense that there is a better angel in us and in people with whom we congregate, not pure, not perfect. We never claim that, but that is our dream, and that's the chase that we're in. And in this day and age, it's easy to be silenced, to throw in the towel, just say, let's wait and see what happens in the next 4 years. And I actually believe what Lincoln said. He said, you can't destroy this nation in 4 years. 620,000 people died, keep the Union whole, as whole as it could be. in our 4 years, it's not going to be taken apart. We're going to lose some ground in certain places where every morning we watch on TV that the next cabinet in that room, we go, whoa, that's pretty crazy. But we must stand firm in the struggle for the better angels in us. It starts with us, in the church, in the world, and find ways to mingle with those who are on the opposite side, and talk as we can, to mingle with those who are seeing the world through the eyes of like Lincoln, seeing their faith in that fashion, be with others and not just hunkered down ourselves. Amen. That's something.